Now, I'd like to welcome our next speaker, who's Devin Liddell. Devin is the principal brand strategist with the design consultancy TEAGUE. TEAGUE's clients include Boeing, Marriott, and Microsoft. And Devin also teaches regularly at the School of Visual Concepts in Seattle, Washington. So please join me in welcoming Devin. Devin, if you could come up, that would be great.
Laura.
Devin, nice to meet you. Now, Devin is going to talk to us about a very interesting topic that was highlighted a little bit, actually, in what we just heard there from Mark, about how hotels and airlines can collaborate to shape the future of travel. Take it away.
Thank you, Laura. I just want to start off by saying, in a word, the current strategic direction of the airline industry can be summed up in less. We are, in general, offering less when it comes to the seat pitch. We're offering fewer food options. We're asking people to pay for it. And we are also asking people to bring less of their bags or fewer of their bags on board. And I want to talk a little bit today about why I think this direction is wrong, why our innovation efforts around this are pointed in the wrong direction. Earlier this year, actually, a perfect portrait of less emerged with Samoa Air announcing the first ever charge by weight, which is, again, a perfect signature of the less strategy. The less you weigh, the less you pay. So it could usher in a whole new tradition of pre-flight fasting, which would be a new for families. All of this focus on less is completely understandable. And it's especially understandable when you think about the average airline profitability is only 0.1%. If you take all the airlines everywhere in the world, the average net margin is 0.1%, which of course is an exceedingly low number. To put this number in context, when oil and gas executives were called before the US Congress to answer charges of potential price gouging, they complained that their net margin was just 6%. So we have a long, long ways to go, and 0.1% is obviously a very good explanation for our focus on less. We are very much fixated on cost management, which was also brought up less today. As a strategy, though, less is not sustainable. We can only take away so much. Mark sort of alluded to this earlier. They can only make their seats so slim. Eventually, we will run out of things to take away. So less isn't a very sustainable strategy at all. And in fact, there's really good evidence, in particular when it comes to ancillary revenues, that if anyone's wondering about if ancillary revenues will save us, that actually, the more an airline relies on ancillary revenues, the less preferred it is amongst passengers. There's a direct correlation between the percentage of an airline's revenue in terms of ancillary revenue and how much it's preferred by passengers. So performance does not equal happiness by any measure. And in fact, despite the industry having the second best performance in 23 years in 2012, the industry as a whole had its second best performance in 23 years in terms of on-time arrivals, baggage handling, and involuntary bumpings. And yet, even within that, passengers' complaints went up 22% with the Department of Transportation. So they are feeling the pinch as well. They are not happy. Contrary to less, the path to greater profitability is actually about more. It's actually about offering more. And I'll show you why I think this is true. If you look at the Fortune 500, the hotels that are included in the Fortune 500, they actually average 0.13% in terms of net margin. The airlines that are included in the Fortune 500 for 2012 actually average 0.52%, which is a whopping 5 times the industry average. And yet look at cruise lines. These are outside the Fortune 500, but we know the financials from Royal Caribbean, Norwegian, and so forth. They actually average 5.3% in terms of their net margin. Much, much bigger numbers compared to hotels and airlines. And actually, even though we don't have very good actual data to show this, anecdotally, we believe that all-inclusive resorts boast net margins somewhere in the range of 10 to 15%, also showing that offering more makes you more profitable. So if you think about cruise lines, they actually are a better together proposition. So you get boarding, or lodging, you get food and beverage, and you get entertainment, and you get it all at once. It's all-inclusive style pricing. In fact, one of the most common emerging complaints amongst airline passengers is a lack of transparent pricing. So passengers are giving us signals that they are not up for where we are headed in terms of offering less or charging more for those things we want to take away. I also think it's interesting to point out this relationship here. If you look at Apple's net margin, it actually roughly takes the net margin of Microsoft and Dell to equal it. And Apple is doing more. Everyone sometimes always says that, oh, I wish we could be like Apple. Being Apple is really, really, really hard work because they do more. They are taking on more. They are taking on hardware. They're taking on software. They're taking on services. They're saying, no one can do this better than we can. And that's different than when you look at Microsoft and Dell. They say, well, someone else can handle software or someone else can handle hardware. But it takes the net margins of both Microsoft and Dell to equal the net margin of Apple, proving that actually doing more, again, makes you more profitable. It's not about less. And of course, there's lots of precedents for this. The peanut butter and jelly might be the original, but consumers are asking us to do this. Consumers love, and have loved for a long, long time, the prospect of better together. They have demonstrated this over and over and over again. And in fact, it's only growing in influence. If you are not a believer in the better together proposition, I ask you to behold the glory that is the Taco Bell Doritos Locos Tacos. This is actually a taco that has a Dorito shell. I'm sure it's awful for our waistlines, but it tastes really, really good. Laura has to chase hurricanes, and I had to try this taco. The taco is good. It's a very good taco. More impressive than the taste of the taco, though, is its margin. It's a 40% markup compared to Taco Bell's standard taco. So just by collaborating with Doritos to do something seemingly fairly simple, which is to include a Doritos shell instead of a standard shell, they get a 40% markup compared to their typical taco. If you look at the Fiat 500, the Gucci edition of the Fiat 500, a 52% premium over the base price. That racing stripe that you see, the model is not included, but the racing stripe and the Gucci interior is worth $8,000 to consumers. And that's even more impressive when you consider that that $8,000 is building on a base price of $15,500. So the base Fiat 500 goes for $15,500. The Gucci edition goes for $23,500. That's how much the Gucci brand matters to consumers. $8,000. Better together. And of course, several years ago, Apple and Nike teamed up to create Nike Plus. Nike Plus actually has grown even beyond Apple. But now there are 11 million members that are part of the Nike Plus community. Nike uses this community, of course, to sell all sorts of shoes and socks and services and so forth. But it's a vibrant community. And I think one of the things that's really important to point out about the Doritos Taco and the Gucci edition Fiat 500 and the Nike Plus community is that these actually are going beyond traditional co-branding relationships. It used to be that co-branding was really, to be a little bit simplistic, was really about slapping logos onto offerings and saying, hey, look, we've done this thing together. And certainly there is room for this. There is lots of room for this. Delta announced earlier this year that they are going to be doing they're going to bring on Weston's heavenly bedding on board aircraft. And that's an example of better together, but perhaps maybe a little bit more in the old school of a simple co-branding relationship. What Doritos and Gucci and Nike and Apple have done is they have paired up together to create something that did not exist before. These things did not exist and could not exist without being in partnership with one another. It's not about slapping logos on top of advertising. It's about creating something entirely new. And I think that example offers a bright path forward for us as an industry. Airlines and hotels are, I think, really natural partners when it comes to possibilities here. If you think about what airlines and hotels face, they face a lot of the same challenges. They're both faced with designing around a common platform. You have squares and tubes. They also have to make these squares and tubes work for really diverse sets of audiences. I frequently fly on the flight from Seattle, where I'm based, down to San Francisco for day trips. And half of that flight on board Alaska Airlines, so it's a great flight, half of it is filled with business travelers like myself who are going to go down and then come back probably around 4 p.m. The other half is filled with people who are continuing on in that same aircraft to Puerto Vallarta, and they let you know about it. These two audiences could not get further apart in terms of where their heads are at. And actually, I hate that they're on board. I shouldn't lie. If I were them, I would be just as happy. But I don't like that they're wearing the party hats at 6 a.m. Because that's not the mood that I'm in. But hotels have some of the same challenges. Hotels are catering to both leisure travelers and business travelers as well. So we have common platforms. The other thing that they face is this impossible design challenge that we all face in the industry between operator performance and passenger comfort. And Mark obviously brought this up in great detail earlier. That tension between operator performance and passenger comfort is really defining everything we do from a design standpoint. And hotels have the same challenge. They have the same challenges to get the most out of their footprints. So really, airlines and hotels are extraordinarily natural design partners. The other thing I want to do is a quick segue in terms of why I think we're approaching this in the wrong way from an airline standpoint. We, and some people have brought this up earlier, that I think we're fussing too much with miles, points, and rewards. And people have brought up the word loyalty earlier. And I think, perhaps to be a little bit controversial, I think loyalty in the airline industry is mostly a myth. That if you opened up people's wallets at a TSA checkpoint, you would probably see lots and lots and lots of different loyalty cards and so forth, other indicators of loyalty that actually does not really exist. When we're talking about brands, though, we're not actually after loyalty. We're after a higher order. And what we're after, really, is love. Love is a higher order than loyalty. Love is that thing that binds you to one offering, and that's what we're after. Love is the thing that binds you to a singular offering. I will always go with this offer. I can cross this off my list because I have sorted out that I am a customer of blank. That is love. The fact that people wait in line for Apple products that will be available 2 hours later, that is love. It's not logical, but it's love. And that's the thing that we're missing the most in the airline industry. I also have been getting a little more agitated lately when I read a lot of the magazines, and there's so much emphasis on what I call the seamless holistic journey. It's a lot of talk about seamless holistic journeys in terms of owning the entire A to B process. And I find it actually a little bit illogical, considering that we are taking away everything else, but suddenly we want to jump into the business of controlling the entire journey. I'm not sure where that's coming from. But the thing I think that's most important to recognize about seamless holistic journeys, besides the fact that they are really a designer's fantasy, if you ever take one look at a TSA checkpoint, and that whole seamless holistic journey is not so much of a truth. Just does not exist. But what customers and what passengers are really asking us to do, what they're really asking us to do from a design standpoint, is not offer a seamless holistic journey. That's not what they're asking. They know intuitively that it's not possible. What they're asking us to do is just create better seams. They are asking us to fix the problems within the seams. They're not asking us to make it seamless. They're asking for better seams. And this is where I think there's a tremendous opportunity for airlines and hotels to team up to fix seams, to make the seams the points where people fall in love with brands. So I want to offer just a quick portrait of 5 points along a not so seamless holistic journey that could benefit from a better together collaboration between airlines and hotels. The first is to give more to get more versus take more to make more. And this is what I mentioned earlier about that, the issue with ancillary revenues. We are leaning too much on ancillary revenues to save us. And actually, as I mentioned earlier, the evidence all shows that it's the wrong direction to take, that people do not prefer us. The more we rely on ancillary revenues, the more our preference ranking dips. But if we take a lesson from what we're hearing from passengers, all-inclusive inspired pricing is really what they're asking for. They're asking for more clarity about what they're actually paying for. And also, they love, just like anyone, they love getting stuff. They love getting more for their money. So this whole emphasis on less, which is really about kind of making everything a la carte, is in a lot of ways not cohesive in terms of how the human brain actually works in terms of what it's expecting in terms of buying stuff. 2 is to get rid of all the small anxieties that plague travel. And Laura has referenced some of the small anxieties earlier, but it really does come down to small things. And I've mentioned this in other presentations, that small things make a big deal when it comes to the human brain. We were talking about hotels earlier, but I've always been fascinated by the fact that DoubleTree has done so well by handing out cookies. DoubleTree has basically built a worldwide brand around the idea that when you check in, you get a warm chocolate chip cookie. That's it. It's just a small, small gesture. It's not a big global endeavor in terms of brand culture or brand strategy, even though those things are really, really important and really, really irreplaceable. But just a small gesture of handing out a cookie takes the DoubleTree brand into another category. But if you think about how airlines and hotels could collaborate here, one would be, let's get rid of this anxiety about where will there be bin space for my bag? Or if there isn't going to be bin space and they force me to check it, what will happen when I go and go to the carousel? Will it be there? If an airline and a hotel were to team up, they could actually skip this process altogether and do direct transfer of bags to hotels. No more anxiety about where I'm going to put my bag in the bin or having to wait in line at the carousel. I know that when I team up with this partnership between this airline and this hotel, that my bag is directly transferred to the hotel, guaranteed, and I don't have to worry about it. The other one, I think, is getting something for the middle seat. I'm actually amazed that no one has made more of a big deal about using this as an opportunity. But we all know, it's one of those things that the passengers all talk about, that the middle seat is awful. No offense to Recaro, that middle seat is fantastic from a seat standpoint. It's the people around you that maybe make it not so great. But the middle seat is definitively suboptimal. And yet, as an industry, our reaction to that is, oh well. I hope maybe you should book earlier next time. What if we turned that on its head and actually gave something for the middle seat? You turn the middle seat into an opportunity for joy. You got a free movie. You got a better room at the hotel. You got a free drink. You got something. You got something for a suboptimal experience. If you go to any sports and entertainment venue, they always discount suboptimal seating. Obstructed view, you did not pay the same for compared to other seating. And yet, we mostly ignore that and just sort of stick people with the middle seat. The third, and there's been a lot of discussion around the possibilities in terms of IFE, is what I would call service everywhere. And that's the idea that if you paired up, if an airline and a hotel paired up, you could start a movie on board and finish it at the hotel. I was on a flight recently where they handed out players for people to watch movies, and when the flight was nearing its completion, one of the stewards came on board and said, for those of you who are watching movies, you might want to consider fast forwarding to the end now. Sure, that's not what Fox had in mind. But if you did team up with a hotel, you could start the movie on board and finish it at the hotel, or vice versa. And I think that's compelling. Order room service for later before landing. How many of you have been on a flight that maybe is either delayed or you're flying east, so you're losing a lot of time in the air, and you wonder, when I get to my hotel, will room service still be available? Where will I eat if I arrive after 10 p.m.? Will I end up at Applebee's, a cab ride away? But in this type of partnership, you could order room service via IFE on board and have it arrive at a certain time. Once you know that arrival is imminent, you could order it and have it arrive right when you arrive. That would be very compelling. You could even adjust to room temperatures and fragrance. If you think about all the attention the Nest thermostat has received, a networked thermostat, anything can be networked, but a networked thermostat would let you, on board, adjust room temperature in your hotel room to the optimal temperature. I know that sounds sort of fantastic, but it is fantastic. It's awesome. People would love to do that, and it's all possible in an Internet of Things. The fourth one is help them be their best. And this is where a partnership between hotels and airlines could really be spectacular, by offering post-flight spa services or bringing hydration and nutrition amenities in the room based on where people are coming from. And also the idea of express check-in. When you've been on a long, long flight, most people don't want to queue up again. It's just another queue, another part of the not so seamless holistic journey. You could check in on board, have your room key digitally loaded onto your smartphone so that you can skip the check-in altogether. These are all things that are possible if a hotel and an airline had a partnership where they created something entirely new and made this possible. The fifth and last one is more time in better spaces. There are lots and lots of lovely airports out there, but there are lots of airports that aren't so great to be in. In general, hotels offer better spaces than airports. If you knew your flight was going to be delayed, it could mean more time in a space that's better. You could stay at the hotel longer. The hotel could give you a free drink. Even if it didn't give you a free drink, just more time in a space that's better is better. Also, the idea of checkout equals check-in. The whole idea of reprinting boarding passes while you're doing business travel is something that's a common complaint for most people. But when you check out of a hotel, you can get your boarding pass right there. Another just a glimpse into what's possible if airlines and hotels teamed up together in the same way that Doritos and Taco Bell have done, in the same way that Gucci and Fiat have done, in the same way that Nike and Apple have done, to create things that weren't possible beforehand, and to move past things that we've accepted as status quo, to move past the status quo that passengers don't like. These are all the things that are pain points along these journeys. If we teamed up with hotels, if there were partnerships, we could move past these in really spectacular ways. And I think you can almost start to imagine some of the natural partnerships. Think about Virgin America and Kimpton Group. They almost seem like they're born from the same brand DNA. Lots and lots of possibilities exist here. Just quickly, the takeaways: less is not sustainable. We will run out of things to take away. So more is the path to greater profitability. We have to figure out ways to offer more. We are natural partners with hotels, so let's collaborate to create something entirely new. And let's let go of the idea of seamless, holistic journeys and start creating something awesome within the seams. Something that's amazing, that will blow the minds of passengers because we've created something that didn't exist beforehand. And I think we have time for a few questions, but while Laura's coming up, this is my contact information if you would like to answer questions after it as well.
Yes, please. That was a provocative presentation, I think we can all agree. Who has a question for Devin? Raise your paw if you have a question. Any ladies asking questions? We've had gents this morning. Men, you may ask questions. I just would like to encourage the ladies to lean in. A lady with a pink cardigan. Thank you very much. Yes, very interesting. I particularly like the middle seat bit. As someone who's been stuck crossing the Atlantic in the middle of row 5 many times with school children. Go ahead, madam.
So when you start combining products and different companies, how do you work on branding for both of them? Like, what's the strategy there?
Yeah, no, that's the question, in case someone didn't hear it, is what's the strategy in terms of combining brands when you start offering combined offerings? And I think what we've seen with the examples I showed you is that you don't have to combine them at all. In fact, brands exist very distinctly in the minds of consumers. Brands know, or people know, they know their brands very, very well. And there actually isn't much need to combine them at all. It is just a collaboration. It is just a partnership. So if you had a partnership between Virgin America and Kimpton Group, or you had a partnership between JW Marriott and American Airlines, there is no need to combine those brands. It is the partnership that matters. It's creating new possibilities that matter. And there isn't any of the fuss required to actually go through the process of trying to merge or meld or otherwise combine them. They can stay entirely distinct.
And we definitely have time actually for a couple more questions. So please stick up your hand and wave it around. Oh, we have a question here. Thank you, sir.
I don't doubt that there needs to be incredible change, and there's a lot of opportunity for change to improve the passenger experience. But I would really question that fundamental point of yours that airlines can't keep doing less and that that's not healthy. Airlines are continuously innovating how to charge more for ancillaries. Just a few weeks ago, we saw Scoot starting to charge to sit in a section of the plane where there are no children. And that while passengers may not like these airlines, they're certainly voting with their wallets. Ryanair is now the largest in Europe. The profits are bigger. AirAsia has a larger profit margin than Cathay and Singapore Airlines, which some would consider maybe the best premium airlines in the world. So how would you maybe incorporate that?
Well, yeah, it's a great question, and I don't doubt, actually, and I referenced this earlier, that there is this fantastic impossible tension in our industry in terms of balancing passenger preference and operator performance. And I think that's where spectacular design often emerges, and I think that's one of the points you're bringing up, that you actually kind of, when you bring that tension out, you actually create spectacular innovation. My beef, and I think actually one of the things, I'll use your example, is that offering services like kid-free zones and so forth is in some ways, it's wonderful on some level, but also it's lacking something that most brands have at their core. Most brands have at their core what I would call generosity. There is and maybe I'll reference Hilton to do this, there is a warmth, a love, there is a spirit of goodness at their core, and that's why people fall in love with those brands. That's why they pay more. It's also important, I think, to forget, too, that the whole point of a brand, the entire point of a brand is to be able to charge premium pricing. That's it. That is the entire reason you would invest in branding at all. To differentiate yourself from the competition and to charge more. No one signs up to be a commodity. No one says, oh, please, let me be the same as my competitor. No one should think that way. So while I appreciate things like kid-free zones and so forth, though I have a 7 and a 6-year-old, so I'm the reason why people are moving away from me. What I think is a better approach is where there is something more generous, something warmer, something more spectacular than just taking away some of those small annoyances and creating something better.
Great, and we've got time for one more question, if anyone has a, sir, there. Oh, did you hear that? I don't know if anyone else could hear, but would it be possible when you print your boarding pass to print your luggage tags as well?
And I'm certainly not the technical expert, but I would say yes. And I think what you're bringing up is that there are tons and tons of possibilities here, and we are not currently exploring them. If we teamed up, we could explore them. If we teamed up, we could explore all of these things and make them possible. The truth is that most people run into the question of, is this possible or is this not possible? And that's where they turn away. It's the brands like Nike and Apple who've said, what if we did this, and then do it, right? None of this would be easy, but it does seem entirely within the realm of possibility. And to your point, absolutely. If you could print a boarding pass, you could absolutely print luggage tags as well. So you could do all sorts of things to, again, make the seams better. Make the seams better, and that's what's going to drive passenger preference in the long run, not taking things away. I don't disagree, to the question earlier, I don't disagree with some of the things around removing weight, removing complexity, and so forth, charging people for things that they want to be charged for. But there's lots and lots of evidence that shows that we are not doing a good job in terms of giving passengers more so that they love us more.
There we go. Thank you so much to Devin for that presentation and the Q&A. Thank you.